Welcome to our podcast and strap in for Movie Monday. Hi, I'm Minky Madison.
Hi, I'm Jack Green.
Today on Movie Monday, we discuss Cell, the 2016 action drama horror written by Stephen King and starring John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. The synopsis is, when cell phone use triggers an apocalypse, a father does his best to reunite with his son. And I give it a rating of 2.5 kernels. What do you give it?
I give this film a rating of 3.5 kernels.
High numbers for you. Okay, so stop and watch the movie first now, or strap in for major spoilers. My favorite line, if you want to know, was cell phones are the devil's intercom.
I didn't
Yeah.
have a favorite line really. It was just general. Yeah, everything was very general for me.
Oh, okay. Well, you gave it 3.5.
Yeah, but in terms of dialogue, I don't particularly feel like anything stuck out.
Yeah, that
That's what
makes
I mean
sense.
by that.
I feel you. Okay, do you want me to go into my stuff first, or do you want to go
Sure,
ahead?
sure, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'll start with my cons. So it's funny because the opening credits was already a con for me. I don't know if you remember them, but the airport chatter and whatnot was nuts. It made me feel like I was schizophrenic or something, like I might be having a seizure because it was way over the top. Do you remember them?
Yeah, I do actually remember that, and it was really phonetic and
Yeah, it was bad. I almost forwarded it just because, but I was afraid I was gonna miss something, But just the way it was filmed and stuff, I think they were going for like a unique feel, but it just hurt my brain. So I wasn't a
hmm
big fan of that. I was just like, what is happening and why are they doing this to my
I
eyes?
agree.
My next con was many things didn't really make a lot of sense to me and they didn't explain it, such as them all having the same dream about the comic character that Clay created. I don't understand how or why that was and what that really had to do with the zombies. Did I miss anything that you picked up on?
I feel like it had a lot to do with the novel that Stephen King wrote that the movie's based off of. And they did an odd thing where they included details from the novel, but if you don't have any of the background that's included in the novel, these things aren't going to make sense in the film. So maybe they
Mhm.
were Easter eggs for people who are doing both.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because that totally threw me. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all. And I haven't read this book. So I was like, are they gonna come back and explain that? And they just never did. So I was like, all right then. But at least that makes sense that it was just backstory that they didn't include that had to do with his book. That makes me feel better for some reason.
yeah, I think just proves that it wasn't inadequacy on their end, rather just a bad interpretation, like a bad way of doing things.
Yeah, it would have been nice for those who haven't read the book to also still know what's going on. That would have been lovely. My next con was they were all very easily trusting with a lot of random people that they meet along the way, which I think in any apocalypse type situation, you would not be so trusting, especially when you don't really have to be. I don't feel like they were in too many places where they really, really needed the people that they just randomly relied on. So I felt that was weird.
Yeah, seemed like it would be the opposite in that situation, that people wouldn't be trusting. They'd be
Exactly.
less trusting than they normally would be. Um,
Yeah, that's what I felt.
so yeah, I agree with that. So far, everything that you're having problems with, I felt the same way.
Yeah. Even that big group of people that they end up staying at the house or whatever, remember?
hmm
There was like a ton of people and they didn't get to know them like at all and they're just in there with them for I don't know, that was bizarre. Okay, so then my last con was my biggest con was that as I said it didn't really make sense and it felt like the movie itself was a trailer for a movie because it didn't go in depth about the backstory and what was going on. So it didn't feel like it had a full plot. It was more like a question without the answers.
hmm I
So it was,
agree. Yeah.
well, where's the next part that explains everything? And that just didn't happen.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of goes into some of the cons that I had felt about missed opportunities to complete the film, really.
yeah.
Um, I don't know, they laid a foundation, but they didn't build upon it. And what you're left with is not a structure at that point, but rather the only
Hmm.
foundation, and only foundation is not a good experience.
Exactly. Especially if you have to read the book to know what's going on. They should at least let you know that somehow before you watch it.
You built the foundation of a house, right? You'll have a house, but it won't be a very comfortable one. So, this,
You won't have any walls.
yeah, you wouldn't have walls. Your heat wouldn't, that you generate it wouldn't stay. It would just float away.
You would have a bunch of raccoon guests that you didn't invite.
Yeah, so big problem. So my cons were I thought it was periods where it was just boring. There's just wasn't much going on, or the dialogue wasn't interesting. Hence me not having really a favorite line. I just there's too many incidents to really touch upon in terms of how it was boring. One that comes to mind was that sounds really bad, but it's true. It was pockets throughout the entire film,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
the airport in the beginning was interesting but hectic and too much going on. And then they would go into times where there wasn't enough going on, in my opinion. Like at the cabin. Do you recall that part where it's kind of right before they find out that the monsters are able to turn other people into monsters just by themselves with their voice? Do you remember that?
Turn other people into monsters.
Yeah, phoners, the phoner freaks, basically. So when it started out, you had to receive the signal to become a mindless beast, basically. But halfway through the film, they can actually produce that noise with their mouth, the people that have been affected. And if they did that to
Um,
you, if they did that to a normal person, they would go right up to their ear, make that noise. They could produce the same noise the cell phone was producing. And that would then turn them, that healthy person, into a monster.
wow, that's funny. I don't think I even noticed that. Like, don't get me wrong, I noticed that like the waves and stuff are coming out of their mouths and everything, but I didn't realize that they could just turn someone that way. That's funny.
Yeah, so it was like a pocket right before that was that action sequence, and it was kind of like just dialogue, and it was boring, in my opinion. I think the film was just too long for what it was. The narrative was too loose. Another thing I didn't like was the animal abuse of the dog at the airport in the very beginning. As we've discussed numerous times, that's a trigger for both of us. There
Hmm.
was like a TSA officer who was accompanied by a canine for sniffing out drugs or protection, something like that. And whenever all the pandemonium happened, you could hear the dog crying, and the camera pans over, and the dog's being bitten by a TSA worker. So that was sad, which is what they were
Yes.
going for, but I still don't care for that.
And
Um,
it's interesting that I missed that. Remember, somehow I was eating my dinner while watching, and I must have looked down right at that part because I did not see the dog at all. Do you remember me
yeah, it
telling
was.
you that?
I do remember you telling me that. It was a very quick scene, so I don't feel too bad. It was only, you must have
And I
just
guess
been
it's a good
perfectly
thing.
timed.
Yeah, because I definitely don't want to see that anyways, because it also sounds terrible. But it's just interesting that I missed it. And I also am surprised I didn't write down that it was boring because it was, and I totally agree with that. Good point.
Yeah, it was. It's sad because it's got two A-list actors, or at least they were at one time, John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. They're not known for producing bad films, but I'm sure they had produced one or two, and this is definitely in the more mediocre category.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, you don't expect them to be in movies this bad, so it's kind of shocking when you watch one. You're just like, wow, what was that?
yeah, so that's about it for my cons. There wasn't. It's not like there's a ton of cons, but there are critical areas where it failed, and it was systemic throughout the entire film, and that's what the rating came from.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you can go into your pros if you want, so we can be more positive.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good plan. Okay, so what I did like was it had some cool ideas that the cell phones could trigger an apocalypse to me was cool. It makes you wonder if something like that would actually be possible. And that idea kind of reminded me actually of Josie and the Pussycats. Have you seen that movie?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, everyone listens to one of their songs on their devices. I think it's earphones and things. And subliminal messages turn them all into brain dead zombies who go and buy all their records and their merch. And it's just kind of funny. So it's not quite the same. They're not actual zombies like killing people and stuff, but they don't think for themselves anymore and they're just out buying everything. And anyway, it
Wow.
just made me of
That is
that.
uncanny, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mm,
like a comedy version of this, I guess. And it's actually worth the watch because even if you don't like the movie, at the end, there's two great music videos with Seth Green, and they're really funny. They're basically just mouthing to the fake boy band music that was in the movie, but it's pretty funny.
well, that's a nice plug for our audience. Go check that out. If that rubs you the right way.
Yeah, it is funny, at least if you like Seth Green and that type of humor anyway. Okay, so my other pros were after the awful opening credits, it got really good for a while, at least in my opinion. But then it started to dissipate and I was getting bored, as you mentioned. But I thought it was interesting when the zombies all opened their mouths and started channeling the airwaves in that strange, like, screech or whatever they were doing.
Yes. Mm,
It was interesting because I didn't expect that at all. So I thought that was kind of neat. And I like the idea of them all being in a hive mind and flocking like birds. It was a
mm-hmm.
cool kind of different take on zombies because I mean zombies have been done to death,
Yes.
and I like the really realistic kind like they did in The Walking Dead. I really like that type, and I like Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that. So like I'm saying, like there's all sorts of zombie movies and they're all very similar. So I just thought it was at least neat that they added some kind of differences to it.
Yeah, I agree. It was funny how you said it picked up after the initial opening scene, because I do have one of my pros that it was fast paced, and so it seems to be in contradictory nature with being boring. But like you were saying, it would get good and things would move along rather well, but then it would stop, and it was start stop
Yes.
start stop throughout the entire film. So one of my pros is also the opposite of one of my cons. So it's kind of odd.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no good flow. Usually movies, at least the good ones, should have a good flow to it, where you're not really bored in most places, if at all. And it's always
Yeah,
keeping your
I
attention.
agree.
And this was hit and miss.
Yeah.
So one of my pros was Samuel L. Jackson singing. I don't know why, but I liked it. And I liked the girl who was in the apartment with them and stayed around for the first half of the movie. I
hmm
liked her character for whatever reason. So a lot of times they had like the side girls they don't usually give too much character to or personality, and I felt like they actually tried with her, and she was likable and interesting. And I didn't love the girl or anything, but but I think she helped the movie rather than hurt the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, putting actors in there that keep it going and change things up is very important, I think. That's why
Yeah.
you want those side characters that are just in for a few scenes. They can really carry a film.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sprinkle them throughout, I can think of really classic movies that have done that. So they really help that they had her in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been even more boring without that other character.
Yeah, you might have not even continued watching had that not happened.
Also, there was some good zombie fight scenes and movements that kept it interesting, and them collectively sleeping at night and listening to music was weird, but not necessarily in a bad way. It was just different, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, how did you like when they did like the Thriller dance on the football field?
That what?
I'm just joking with, because I know you missed a thing or two. Uh,
That's so funny. I was seriously trying to think. I'm like, is he messing? Did that really happen?
the zombies.
Oh my god, you could have tricked me because I seriously, yeah, because I don't know. For anybody who's listening that doesn't know, I have ADD, and sometimes I zone out a bit and miss stuff, or I'm eating my dinner and look down at the wrong time and I miss, a dog being killed or whatever. But yeah, sometimes I'll talk about parts in a movie. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I didn't see it. Anyway, I'm glad that wasn't actually in there because I would have been sad. I would have liked to have seen that. Okay. So, continue with my pros. I only have two more. This one's really stupid. I don't know why I added it in there, but the cell phone bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it as a pro. I don't know why. I guess it's just fun to see a bunch of phones that cost tons of money being burned in like a giant heap or whatever. So I was like,
Cathartic.
hell yeah, that's who the pros.
Yeah.
So my last one is I hated the ending at first because it showed him and his son were fine. And I was like, well, I guess it's just in his mind. And they wanted to leave it on a good note. But then it showed him all zombied out and that he had joined the others. And it was indeed in his mind. So I liked that honestly because the odds of him finding his son with all those zombies and everything are pretty much slim to none, especially alive. And so I don't know. I liked that. I'm glad that they didn't make it where he just found his son and everything was fine. And that would have been really extra stupid to me just because it wouldn't have made any sense at all.
So, was it in the character's head that he had found his son?
Yeah, so I thought initially that it had to have been either way. And then it showed him all zombified and everything. So you think, yeah, it's definitely in his head. But then you're wondering if he actually found his son or not. And then it looked like his son was in the crowd by him somewhere. So I don't know if I was just misseeing that, but I feel like his son was also zombified there. But my assumption is he didn't realize because he was probably turned into a zombie beforehand. But I guess if that's where the son was going, he would be among them somewhere. But do you remember that long, long, long line of zombies?
Uh-huh.
I liked that too. But my point about that long line is there's no way you can find your son with that many zombies because they would definitely attack you before that. So
Yeah.
yeah, to answer your question, I think it was in his mind and that he didn't actually find his son, even though his son happened to be among the crowd.
I just didn't know if all the zombies throughout the movie were basically living in an alternate reality where they were happy, or if
Oh,
or if this was a film technique where it was just tricking you, making the watcher think that the main character found their son when they actually hadn't, and then revealing you that they became just like everyone else. I didn't know if they were just if it was
well,
just for the viewer or if that was a genuine experience of the character.
well, I think it's both. I think in his head he really is reunited with his son
Oh,
because he's basically dead at this point and he's a zombie. So I think it's both. I think they did want you to think that he found his son and then oh shit no he's a zombie and he didn't. But that's a good point. I didn't think about everybody being in their own world picturing what they like, a good life or whatever. That's an interesting thing because I guess they all technically would.
and in that case, maybe this is some type of creature that's taken over their brain and placed their consciousness or awareness in an alternate state so that they'll be occupied while they drive their real body around.
I like that. That actually makes me like the ending more.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if that's what they were going for or not. I like the special effects. I thought they were realistic. Like in the beginning, when there's a girl at the airport and she becomes a zombie and she runs into the wall over and over again with her face. And then she turns
Oh
around and she's
yeah.
missing all these teeth. And like I thought that was really good special effects. Even from the dog's cries from being bitten to the special effects of the zombies, all of that made it really realistic. And it was just cool scenes, like escaping scenes where they're going through tunnels, and so I like that. Like we both agreed, the pacing was good when it was good when it was good, basically, and then when it was bad, it was really bad. So an uneven performance really
Yeah.
took. I don't think it was bad acting. Like I don't think I have any criticisms of that, and neither one of us did.
Yeah. I agree. I think it was almost like the writer quit midway and they just tried to throw it together because it was just missing pieces.
Yeah, so it's a shame because they had the right recipe there, it'd be much better, but they didn't utilize what they were given. Another a cool scene that I liked was the football field where all the zombies were sleeping or in some type of trance, and they basically burned them all alive. I'm sure you recall that, right?
Yeah, I do.
So that was a cool scene. That's what I was joking with you about earlier when I said they were doing the Thriller dance on the football
I know.
field.
What's funny is when you just said football field, I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna make that Thriller joke again.
No, that actually
That's
happened, just not the dancing. But
yeah, I was waiting for you to say the dancing. Anyway.
so yeah, that was cool. But yeah, other than it being fast paced, lots of action, Those are really all the pros that I had. It seems like you had a lot more pros despite not liking it.
Yeah, I did. Well, yeah, my main thing was it was so disjointed, and like you said, there was a lot of boring parts, and the good parts are good, the bad parts are really bad. So I just, to me, I wouldn't recommend it. So since I wouldn't recommend it, I gave it a 2.5.
Yeah, I don't think I would recommend it, with the exception of if you're at home and there's literally nothing else on, and you happen to give it a shot, because it might be okay. These are just solely my
Yeah, I
opinion.
second that.
So yeah. Uh,
And I have a question for you.
yes.
Does putting your cell phone in the fridge really make the battery last longer? Do you remember that?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I looked it up.
Oh,
Because
okay.
remember Jackson puts his phone in the freezer and says the battery will last longer.
Uh-huh.
So I looked and there's actually mixed answers online, so I guess I don't really have an answer. But some were saying that it really works and they do it all the time. And then some were saying that you can do it, but okay, some were saying put the whole phone in the freezer like they did in the movie, and that's just totally perfect. Some were saying you can do it, but only put the battery in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some were saying it doesn't work at all and it might ruin your phone. So it was kind of mixed. A lot of people were like swearing by it. I don't know if they're just evil and they want people to break their phones or what. But so I guess I would suggest to do that only if you're desperate enough and your phone's already a lost cause. Maybe give that a shot. But because one lady said that her phone was totally broken and she was actually going to get a totally new phone, but she thought she would try that. And so she put her phone in the freezer and then the battery worked again and she didn't have to buy a new phone or a new battery.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah, unless it's your phone's already going to be thrown out anyway, then you might as well.
yeah, I don't think any of your parts of your phone will do well under cold temperatures. They're not designed for that. Now, if you stick the battery in there, that may help. I'm not sure. Extend the battery life, but the idea is that it's slowing down the chemical reactions or the electrical reactions in the battery. So, you ever hear that when they have like a person that has a bomb or there's a bomb, they'll freeze the bomb and
Actually, yeah.
it'll prevent the signal from traveling along the wire to detonation. It won't allow it to detonate because it's blocking the signal or slowing it down. So I think it's the same principle with the battery. It's preventing the degrading of it by blocking the signal.
I
But I don't
see.
know much.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cell was unfortunately not a great film that we would recommend. However, in my personal opinion, if you are at home and there's nothing else on, I don't think it would hurt to watch it. It's something you could doze off to maybe, and when you wake up, you might see some good scenes, some good action scenes. But if you're missing these boring
Those
parts,
in the right place.
yeah, if you're missing these boring parts, it would only help you enjoy the film, not take away from it. So that is our summary. Uh,
That is our
that
summer.
is our summary, and that's a
Oh,
wrap.
that's our summer. We're heading into fall. I'm like, what the hell? It's about to be winter.
And that is a wrap.
That's so funny. Will you say that again? I think I was talking during
That
the
is a
thing.
wrap.
Oh, you always say that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Yay!
Very good.
Lone Food Media.